Let's talk about airfare pricing. Here's a popular flight shopping and booking site called Skyscanner. Besides presenting current fares, Skyscanner uses scraping and machine learning AI to provide predictions regarding what fares for a route might be if you book it on a future date. The goal is to help travelers make buying decisions. Should they buy now or wait and buy later? So why should we need to predict flight prices in the first place? Shouldn't the fare for a route be the same no matter when you are booking? Here's the thing, fares change constantly. American Airlines, the largest U.S. carrier, makes about 500,000 price changes every day. An airline might change the number of seats allocated to various fare classes on the same flight on the same day multiple times over several days. Or an airline might change the fares for the same fare class on the same flight on the same day multiple times over several days. In either case, to the travel shopper, fares appear to change. Why would airlines do this? They are trying to maximize profits just like any other business. The airline wants to sell as many seats as possible for a flight for the maximum price possible. An empty seat on a flight means that the airline missed a sale. As soon as an empty seat leaves a departure gate, it is lost inventory and lost revenue. The airline can never get that revenue opportunity back. It is inefficient for an aircraft to take off almost empty with only a few expensive seat tickets sold. Also, revenue may not be maximized if the aircraft takes off full, but all the seats were sold for the lowest fare per seat. This is why the airline's revenue managers attempt to find a balance between selling each seat for the highest possible price while filling as many seats as possible. They want to balance customer demand with the available inventory of seats on a flight while maximizing the total amount of revenue for each flight. To achieve this balance, airlines attempt to understand their customers and their purchasing preferences. Airlines analyze traveler purchasing behavior by assigning customers to major purchasing behavior profiles. The traditional profiles that almost all airlines use are leisure travelers and business travelers. Let's take a look at each of these traveler profiles. Leisure travelers tend to be price sensitive and plan their travels weeks or even months in advance. Leisure travelers also tend to be more flexible regarding the day of travel and time of travel. They will often arrange their travel plans to get the best fare. So, revenue managers have to sell cheaper tickets to leisure travelers and make these fares available weeks or months in advance of the flight. This will help to fill more seats and maximizes inventory utilization. Business travelers tend to be very schedule-focused. For example, business travelers typically want to depart early in the day so that they may be able to attend a meeting on the day of arrival or make a business dinner on arrival. And on return, they often want to depart late in the day to maximize work hours on the day of departure. And they want to return on a Friday so that they have their weekend free. Also, business travelers often book travel a few days or a week before their departure date, but do not have the long lead times of leisure travelers. They also tend to be less price sensitive because the company is paying the fare. To take advantage of the business traveler's booking pattern, revenue managers will often increase fares as the departure date approaches to maximize revenue. Also, revenue managers tend to price itineraries lower if a Friday or Saturday night stayover is included. This type of itinerary tends to indicate a leisure traveler. If you analyze the general price trend of the airfare for any route, you'll see this pricing logic in action. The fare remains about the same for months before the departure date, and then it starts to increase in multiple distinct steps as the departure date gets closer. The airline is attempting to sell seats to leisure travelers further out and capture business travelers with higher fares closer to the departure date. Fares on a flight typically increase in distinct steps because most often fare amounts are managed by manipulating the number of seats available in a fare class. The price changes are based on the booking patterns of the two primary traveler profiles. If the traveler purchases at least 2 weeks in advance, a discounted fare is often offered. As the booking dates get within the 2-week window, the fare starts to increase considerably for the same service class, whether it's economy, business, or first class. Since it is presumed that leisure travelers will spend less and business travelers are willing to spend more, flights usually have multiple fare step increases as the window to the departure date closes in. Simply put, as the booking dates get closer to the departure date, fares tend to increase. Remember, more often than not, the fares are managed by opening and closing the number of seats available to various fare classes. In addition to the leisure versus business demand-based fare strategy, airlines also implement other strategies to dynamically modify available fares. The implementation of these other strategies tend to add more peaks and valleys to the fares made available to travelers. For example, let's say there are 100 economy class seats on an aircraft for a given flight. These 100 seats belong to the same cabin class. However, the airline doesn't want to sell all of them at the lowest fare price. The carrier distributes those 100 seats into multiple buckets. In our example, there may be only 10 seats available at the lowest fare price. This lowest fare bucket may have reduced services and the lowest bag allowance. Other seats will be allocated to higher-priced fares represented by fare buckets, also known as fare classes. Once 10 seats are sold in the lowest fare bucket, the fare bucket is closed. No seats will be offered at this highly discounted price. Continuing offers for the remaining 90 seats will be made based on higher-priced fare buckets. A specific number of seats are allocated to each fare bucket. As reservations continue to be booked, the fare buckets are closed as the seats allocated to each fare bucket are sold. Fare buckets are closed based on the lowest to highest fare. So, the fares go up no matter what as lower fare buckets are sold out. That's what this process implies, but that's not how the airline actually manages price. Sometimes, the fares go down. If fares only go up as the buckets fill, the airline might lose a lot of price-sensitive customers and miss the opportunity to fill a flight to capacity and maximize revenue. Remember, a seat on a flight is a highly perishable inventory item. An empty seat on a departed flight represents lost revenue. Also, if the fares only go up, there is much less of a need for sophisticated revenue management and machine learning algorithms to predict fares. Airlines consider customer demand to determine when to close and possibly reopen fare buckets. Demand looks at how fast the various buckets are getting filled. Here's an example. During the first week a flight is available for sale, 10 seats are allocated to the lowest fare class, and those 10 seats are sold. The lowest fare class would be closed because all of the allocated seats have been sold. During the next week, only one traveler purchases a seat in the second fare class. This scenario might indicate to the airline there is low demand for the flight. Therefore, they might allocate more seats to the lowest fare class to entice more price-sensitive customers to book. This also comes into play if there is unexpected high demand. If demand is exceptionally high and the flight starts filling up faster than anticipated, the airline may close lower-priced fare classes to push travelers to higher fares. Remember that if it is weeks or months prior to the flight departure date, the airline knows there are still high-value business travelers who will book a week or two out from the departure date. Therefore, the airline may push fares even higher, knowing there is a secondary demand peak coming from business travelers. Managing this evolving demand curve with multiple peaks to maximize revenue, as well as capacity utilization, are the main drivers in price changes for a flight. This is commonly referred to as reactive pricing. Demand for a particular flight dictates the pricing of seats on that flight. From the outside looking in, a traveler does not see all of the parameters influencing demand and just sees fares changing in what sometimes appears to be arbitrary moves. There are even more factors a revenue manager must consider to keep prices in sync with dynamically changing demand and pricing parameters. The fare for a specific fare class can also change based on other conditions. For example, if the cost of jet fuel increases, an airline may raise the base fare across all fare classes. Airlines also consider holiday and seasonal trends to determine fares. On some routes, there may be higher demand in the summer because of vacation travel. With higher demand during these peak periods, the airline can set higher fare prices because more people want to travel. Revenue managers will also increase fares to specific destinations on dates preceding and following specific events, such as Super Bowl, World Cup, major conventions, or a rock festival. Higher demand for the events provide the opportunity to capture travelers who are willing to pay higher fares. Additionally, revenue managers will react to what competitors are doing on specific routes. A low-cost airline may open competing flights on a route. In order to continue to compete on the route, traditional airlines may need to lower their fares to compete with a low-cost carrier. Sometimes airlines must deal with uncommon events that may cause sudden short-term or long-term drops in bookings or demand. This includes events like hurricanes, snowstorms, and ash clouds. In the industry, these type of events are referred to as an IROP event. This stands for irregular operations, meaning the airline must implement some type of irregular operation for impacted flights. For flights impacted by such events, the airline may change fares, cancellation policies, change policies, and schedules. These are all examples of how airline revenue managers are dynamically managing fares today. With the advent of reliable and real-time artificial intelligence platforms, things are beginning to change in the world of airline revenue management. Pricing strategies airlines use today are based on a broad set of rules and limited number of price buckets or fare classes. These constraints are mostly imposed by the legacy GDS systems at the core of airline pricing and booking. The basic rules revenue managers use today are based on selling cheaper tickets to price-sensitive leisure travelers and more expensive tickets to business travelers who book much closer to the departure date. New technologies provide real-time capabilities to consider many more parameters and generate pricing tailored to the customer and demand as it exists at the time of the offer. AI can segment the customer base much further than the typical leisure and business traveler groups. A note about selling through travel agencies. The travel agency-based distribution model puts restrictions on what carriers can know about travelers who book through an agency. This includes brick-and-mortar and online travel agencies. The airline has to guess what the true profile of a customer is. Segmenting travelers into two large groups, those who are price-sensitive and those who are not price-sensitive, are about the best customer profiles airlines can apply to the agency channel. In the case of pricing for the agency channel, the airline mostly bases fares on demand and booking lead time at the time of purchase. When interacting directly with customers, airlines can have much more detailed information about the traveler and their requirements. The airline can consider things like previous bookings, how often do they perform a flight search, which flight and product links do they click on, what credit card are they using, what is the destination profile, is it typically a leisure destination, and other members of the travel party. With a more detailed customer profile, the airline can use more advanced AI systems to personalize fares and bundle product offerings. So that wraps up our introduction to pricing. We looked at how airlines are managing fares today and some of the challenges revenue managers face.